Good morning, everyone. It's 8 o'clock here in San Antonio, and I'm so glad to see all of you this morning at the intersection. And it seems to be just a little cooler outside, whatever cooler might mean in our heat, but a little cooler. So that's nice. It'd be a good time to go take a walk quick before it gets too hot. This morning, we really have an exciting briefing coming for us about domestic violence prevention, where we've come in the last half a dozen years, what that movement's been like, what's happening today through collaborative efforts, like here at the intersection with faith, community, and civic leaders working together, um, and bringing some resolve and compassion to the suffering that's happening in terms of domestic violence. And we'll also be hearing about some specific work and gathering conference that's happening this August here in San Antonio. So I want to get to that as quickly as possible, but also want to give people some opportunity to get here on the screen so that we can get the fullest amount of people and the fullest amount of information out. So are there any announcements? Doug's going to do his usual with Pathways to Hope, as he should. Go, Doug.
Yeah, Tobin Center, August 23rd and 24th. The registration link is in the chat. The attendance registration is free, and we'll offer CEUs for free. So sign up. We have 50% more workshops this year than we ever had before in the past. So there'll be something, I guarantee you, there'll be something there you want to participate in and learn from.
And the one we're going to be hearing about, I want you to go ahead and give the details on the No Mosque conference now so that some get it, and we'll do it, of course, at the end again. So, Sam or Karen, do you want to do that? Tell us the
Okay,
dates and times.
sure, real quickly. Unfortunately, we are occurring concurrently with Doug Beach and the NAMI. Sorry about that. So we're gathering Thursday evening is kind of our kickoff from, let me make sure I get the right date here, the 22nd of August. And then we have a full day August 23rd and a full day August 24th. And we have brought in two wonderful gentlemen this morning, David Green and Donald Bell from the national organization. The organization is called NOMOD, National Organization for Men Against Sexism. And I'm going to turn it over to them to kind of give you an understanding of what all they will be bringing to us.
Thank you. And I give one last announcement and then we're going to start. But we are in the midst of an interfaith summit, San Antonio. It was two parts and it was done intentionally this way. The session one was a week and a half ago on Tuesday, July 9th. And we heard from the executive director at the Center for Law and Religion from UT Austin. And he talked about religious freedom, and we learned so much, and we've got that recording, and so we've been sending that out as well. The second part is next Tuesday evening, the 23rd, if I have that right in my head, 6 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. It's going to be a community conversation. There will be a light dinner. So if you don't have time to get a meal before or just come. But it's a light dinner, so you will be fed. But it's going to be a community conversation on where we go forward in this work that we're doing now, what we're doing right here, right now. How we can go forward smarter, stronger as a community. We are living in a time of, speaking of election season, we've got that happening. And come next January, we will go through our own local election season. And we'll have a new city council and mayor come next June. So keeping all of that in mind, not that everything depends on that, right? But it does change our chemistry and how we work. And so the community is being invited to this summit to define and determine how we're going to move forward as a community even stronger in this collaborative work. So I really encourage you to be there, and I'll put a link into the chat. So I want to move forward with today's briefing, and we're going to start with Patricia Castillo with the Peace Initiative. She also tells me that her internet is a little unstable this morning. So, Patty, if it helps any, you might even want to close your open screen. I know that probably feels weird, but that might help with your connection. You know, anything that you can kind of, you know, strengthen the bandwidth, we'd be okay with that. We do want to see your face though, but anyway, thank you. And you're going to be helping us move through and meeting all these wonderful people from across the US as well. Thank you. You need to unmute.
Thank you so much for having us this morning. It's very important that we keep a focus on this issue because of the fact that, you know, it is such a grave and serious problem impacting our families. This most recent work started with the Mayor's Commission on the Status of Women commissioning a study on what really is going on with women. And that happened in 2018. And it really shocked our whole community to see what the findings were of that study. It was conducted by UTSA, Dr. Rogelio Sainz and his student intern, Lily, oh my God, Kasura. And they did a tremendous effort, but it really shocked everyone into action. And so since then, so much work has gone on. We formed the Collaborative Commission on Domestic Violence. Judge Peter Sakai at the time did that, and we got to work. We got to work. And so currently what we're doing, and it's an outgrowth of everything that's happened since 2018, okay, is we're working on developing a curriculum to get into the schools to work with young people. And we're focusing on those that have been reported to be experiencing domestic violence. We want to start small and then grow it. We're consulting with people out of Austin and their safe space work over there. We're also looking at implementing assessment of system processes. This will help us execute service of process on respondents with Bexar County Sheriff's Department. This is about getting documentation to people who have been accused of domestic violence, right? We want to streamline documentation, and then of course, enforcing the orders with law enforcement agencies. We're also working very hard on increasing data sharing, because that has been one of our biggest problems, is that nobody knows what each other is doing. And that's a big area of concern. We're also looking at getting people to services quicker. We've created the navigation line out of Bexar County. Law enforcement people tap into that when they go to a call, and they help law enforcement determine the level of risk that victim is experiencing. Like, is she in a situation that is lethal? And then they get her to the correct services by tapping in with the health department, right? We're also working very diligently at getting people connected to legal services. This is happening by way of, you know, getting pro bono lawyers to donate their efforts. Here at the Peace Initiative, I have an attorney that does this work too, and we don't charge. You know, these cases are handled pro bono, right? We have funding from other sources to pay our staff to do this work. Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid received a bunch of money from ARPA funds to do this work, also take on additional cases. We're also looking at transferring weapons from people that have been convicted of domestic violence and storing them, while their cases are being, adjudicated and beyond, right? Within organizations and communities, we're also developing communications campaigns. We're doing all kinds of things like town halls, public service announcements, the Love Is campaign, the Purple Porch campaign. We worked diligently to help develop the sacred website tab on, Love Should Not Hurt, so that people can quickly click on that tab and find resources in their area. We also have a focus on high risk cases, right? Where, those cases demand, a much more comprehensive response. And, people need to get to help quicker. And the social services community needs to rally around those cases and make sure that they're getting help, that we're lessening their barriers to getting help. And this involves law enforcement, prosecution, criminal and civil courts, probation, parole, healthcare, housing, and public benefits, to do a wraparound type service with these cases that we're handling. And we also, every year for the past 4 years, done an annual symposium. And throughout all those 4 years that we've done this symposium, every October, the first Thursday and Friday of October, we've had 2,178 attendees going to those conferences. And usually we cover a wide range of topics. Another huge effort that we're really proud of being part of is implementing the Triple P Positive Parenting Program for thousands of parents that need help, right? And to me, the most important piece of that is eliminating corporal punishment. We don't allow for corporal punishment anymore by way of that parenting program. It's evidence-based, it's used worldwide, and we've put 3,000 parents through that program so far, and we're going to keep doing that. And most recently, I've had Commissioner Rebecca Clay Flores support that effort. Originally, we got that funding from the city and the San Antonio Area Foundation. And we're also working on, training people all over our community, about the dynamics of domestic violence, resources. And this is, like going after all the different professional groups in our community so that everyone is aware about what is available. We also have a committee that got together to focus on marginalized communities and how do we get beyond barriers to reach marginalized communities. We coordinated a training for judges, attorneys, criminal justice professionals, and advocates to support the needs of marginalized communities. We also put together, lots of us participated in a 3-day training to learn how to be expert witnesses for these cases for the district attorney's office so that we can present information vital to helping people involved in those cases, the dynamics of domestic violence and how pervasive they are, and what happens to a victim when they've been through those dynamics, right? We've also done, along with Family Violence Prevention Services, ourselves, the Peace Initiative, Rio Grande Legal Aid, conducted monthly webinars from 2019 all the way until present time, where we provide an educational forum that brings together subject matter experts and community-based professionals, advocates, judges, survivors, law enforcement people, and community members to discuss the current domestic violence trends and what's going on and what we need to do about that. And during those times, we also gather information to help us make decisions about what needs to be tweaked, what needs to be, handled differently, where are the glitches, all of that. So we're constantly looking at ourselves, right? And listening to people with lived experience so that we can better our service delivery to the community. And so this is most of the kind of, a very small description of some of the work that we've been doing. If you're interested in learning more, today's presentation of the Domestic Violence Task Force at 12 noon, we're going to be talking about the strategic plan for the next 5 years. So you're welcome to join us for that event as well. Thank you. I'm done.
Who's up next? It looks like David's getting ready to talk.
Well, I was going to suggest that, Don, maybe you want to start with a little history of NOMAS, a little background, and then I can get into the model. Is that a good way to start? But first you have to unmute.
You need to unmute.
Yes, that'll be fine. Good morning, everybody. My name is Donald M. Bell. I'm coming to you from Chicago, and I am looking forward to returning again to San Antonio this summer. You will catch me in that really delicate spot between the Illinois State Fair and the Democratic National Convention. And I'll be coming to San Antonio in between that. But we hope to welcome some of you to Chicago for the Democratic National Convention, or for any reason at all. We are a sanctuary city in a sanctuary state. We take our faith issues, our issues of human relations, very, very seriously in this area. So all are welcome here. With that being said, I have the honor, as part of my life's legacy, of being one of the founding members of the National Organization for Men Against Sexism. And we were very particular about our preposition. The organization is called the National Organization for Men Against Sexism, not of men. We are an organization that includes women in all levels of our organization and all of our history. We feel that it's very important when we confront issues of patriarchy and sexism that we do this with the witness, the participation, and the approval of women, while we strive to release ourselves of the effect of traditional masculine socialization that calls for the underpinnings of sexism. We recognize that if you're in the privileged position, you never quite get there. All you do is constantly strive to get better, and that's what we do. And we cannot do that without the information and the feedback and the support of women. So we're not a man-hating group. We don't hate ourselves. We love our brothers, but we also love our sisters. And we don't feel that we are better because we distance ourselves from our sisters. Our fourth tenet is that we strive to enhance men's lives. And the way that we do that is by being anti-racist, anti-sexist, being LGBTQIA plus affirmative, anti-classist, all of those things that diminish people. We feel that we can function in humanity collectively to each other's benefit if we eliminate those things that separate us. So with that in mind, we started out as a national men's gathering, and we owe our existence to all of the political movements that came about in the mid-20th century as a result of the civil rights movement. And so following that movement, of course, we grew the women's movement. We grew what we called gay lib at the time. There was a interest and resurge in labor issues and those kinds of things. All of our social progressive movements came out of that time. And so did this one. Men who, recognizing the issues that women were presenting, said, Well, we don't want to be the enemies. We want to be the allies. We are willing to look at this thing in a way that determines how we participate in the world community. And so from that grew this organization. Initially, we started out with just our men's gatherings because we didn't want to incorporate, because we thought that that was traditional social structuring that men engaged in. But after a while, we did finally decide that we would form an organization. So NOMAS was formed. And over the years, we've conducted the Men in Masculinity conferences, of which this one in San Antonio will be our 49th. So we've gone through periods in history where our issues have been much more a part of the general discussion of society. We're not in one of those periods now. And so for those of us who've been a part of the movement for a long time, and you can see my brother David and I are no longer spring chickens. We've been doing this for a lifetime. We're interested in passing along our legacy and our message and our work to younger men and younger women because the issues still persist. We entered this movement in the idealism of youth, thinking that we could get over these things within the course of a lifetime. We'd get past racism, we could end war, we could end poverty. And what we find at this stage of life is that the issues do go on, but the resistance to those issues must also go on. So we implore younger people to participate and to make the commitments and to take up the legacy that we leave behind. So that's a little history of us. David?
Thank you, Donald. The conference itself will have a number of workshops and presentations that deal with the whole sweep of what Donald has introduced, dealing with racism, sexism, heterosexism, various issues. But this forum, I think it is focused on domestic violence. So I thought that I would introduce what's called the NOMAS model for domestic violence offender programs, which really used to be called the New York model, if anybody's familiar with that. And the thing about the NOMAS model is that it's very consistent with the whole range of our principles and tenets. The NOMAS model, unlike some others, begins with the premise that domestic violence is rooted in history, it's rooted in culture, it's rooted in laws, it's part of a broad patriarchal system. That's where you begin. And if you look back historically, that's the reality. So it's not an individual problem. This is not individual bad apples. This is not men who are abusive for whatever individual reasons and life experiences they may have. The major life experience that all of us have is to be born into a patriarchal society, also white supremacists and the rest of it, but particularly a patriarchal society. And that patriarchal society teaches us from the day we draw breath that men are the dominant group, men are the superior group. Everyone else is subordinated to that. And the outgrowth of that is for men to be trained from the beginning, right, that they are the masters of their household, the masters of their lives. The women in their lives are subservient, right? The women in their lives should obey them, etc. Again, many men, fortunately, grow out of this or start to question it or come from a different kind of household. But in general, that's what's in the air, that's what's in the mix, and that's where domestic violence comes from. So what do you do about that? Well, the main thrust of the NOMAS model, really the overarching thrust, is that you strive to bring about community change, social change, broad social change. And how do you do that? You don't do that by focusing in on the bad apples. What is that about? That leads you to the therapeutic approach. Okay, we have to take these few bad apples, and give them anger management therapy or wherever it may be to stop them from abusing. That's not going to make very much difference. And if you look at how many bad apples actually get caught, and get referred to offender programs, it's a very small number. What you really need to do is to convince the community, the broad community and the narrower communities, that domestic violence is really part of a patriarchal system and that this system has to be changed if domestic violence is going to not be a problem anymore. So how do you do that? And the offshoot of that also is that if you can do that, if you can bring about community change from your own community on outward, it also sends the message that this is not acceptable behavior. So for the men in that community, they start to recognize, wow, this isn't what I should be doing, and there's going to be consequences if I'm going to do this. It also demonstrates to the women, to young people, that wait, oh, this isn't the way to be. I don't have to accept this. This isn't normal. This isn't the life that I should be leading, being abused and being coerced and all of those things, and dating violence, and the whole sweep of it. So how do you do this? It's a giant task. As Donald has said, we've been through giant tasks and the cyclical nature of social change and all of that stuff. So what the NOMAS model does is it forms a collaboration with the court system, with the legal system. Some people would say, oh, wait a minute, why do you want to collaborate with them? Especially in communities that are oppressed particularly oppressed, we all are, but particularly oppressed by the legal system and by law enforcement and those why do you want to collaborate with them? Well, through the collaboration, what you can do is sit down with prosecutors, with legislators, with judges, and say, all right, here's the model. This is what we're trying to accomplish. Will you come on board with us? And if you can find people who are willing to come on board with you, you in a sense enter a compact. And the compact is that the court system will no longer do slap on the wrist, wink and nod, and let men off. What it will do is agree that any man who comes before the court and is charged with domestic violence, whether it's a civil court, the criminal court, probation department, wherever it may be, any agency that has the ability to introduce penalties and sanctions, right, that they agree that we will take it seriously. And if it's appropriate in the eyes of the judge or whoever the referral comes from, we will refer men to your domestic violence offender program. Okay, and they will be required to attend it. All right, that's step number one. Step number two is the domestic violence offender program itself, right? It's not a therapeutic program. It's an educational program. It's a program that presents to men who have offended, right, what I've said before, this whole idea of where domestic violence comes from, this whole notion that they have grown up in a patriarchal society that taught them that this was okay, this was the way to behave. Right. And it goes into a lot of depth and detail and provides men with the tools, if they choose to accept them, with the tools with which to change their own behavior. Programs don't change behavior. People change behavior. The individual changes his behavior, right? So it provides with the men with those tools, ways of thinking, right, about domestic violence, ways of thinking about what they may have done, about how they look at the world and why they look at the world that way. And if they choose to do so, they can change. They now have the tools. If they choose not to do so, that's a choice that they make, and there's consequences. Within the program, there's a set of rules, like every program has. But in a NOMAS program, the rules are strict. And if the rules are violated, right, the men are reported to the court for having violated the rules. And another very strong part of the program is the referring agency, whether it's court or probation, the referring agency agrees that if a man is reported to have violated the rules of the program, the court will impose a further sanction. So there's consequences, there's accountability to begin with, right? If you are arrested for domestic violence, right, there will be a consequence. You're not going to be floating free. It's not going to be, discharge and, conditional release and, in anticipation of discharge, those kinds of things. There's going to be a consequence, right? And the consequence may well be referral to an offender program. And if you are referred to that program and you violate the rules, you're going to be back in court again, and there's going to be an additional consequence, right?
David,
so this demonstrates. So
we're going to take just a pause, give you a breath.
Okay.
But
okay.
It's okay.
I could use it.
It's 8:29. And if there are some folks who need to leave and get on with their day, we've had a great briefing, and there's going to be more. I'm learning so much. I love this program, and you're absolutely right. Programs don't change behavior. In fact, in one sense, thinking doesn't change behavior. It's our actions that change behavior. So and that means in all what we're doing, right? Systemically and between ourselves and with ourselves. It's great to have all of you with us this morning. This is an entire series this summer that we're doing as briefings on where different community concerns have come and how they're working together collaboratively and moving things forward. These are all going to be put into a menu that we could utilize throughout our community when we're talking to organizations or congregations or neighborhood associations, our own families, but we can go in and look in that library, that menu, and be able to view those things. Next week, we're going to be getting an update briefing from the San Antonio Community Resource Directory, sacred.org, which powers at the intersection every Thursday morning. And that's where these recordings are archived and posted. So we'll be hearing more about where that's coming. It's come a long way, baby. But I was also thinking, Patricia mentioned that one of the things they don't know what everyone is doing, within domestic violence prevention and efforts, but that's part of Sacred's role. So you might want to have another conversation with them. Part of Sacred is helping people to find resources that they need when they're in need, but part of it is also to be connected to each other, different organizations, and knowing what others are doing. So you might want to consider a further conversation with Sacred. And so that's one intersection this morning. Now I'm going to go back to David. We're going to keep this room open until 8:45. It's all yours, David.
Okay, thank you. I needed to take the time again. Is to go to the NOMAS website. It's www.nomas.org. We have a brand new website that's been totally revamped and I think has a lot of information. It really has a much better explanation of the NOMAS model than I could possibly give. And it's got the history that Don went over. It's got a lot of specifics about that. There's a lot of articles up there. I just think if you take a look at the website, you'll have a much better understanding of what NOMAS is about and what you may find at the conference, some of the things you may hear. In terms of the model, I think I think I pretty much presented the whole thing. I mean, there's a lot of other aspects to it. Obviously, one aspect I think that's important to recognize is that two other things that are really basic to the model, and I think probably more widely basic than just the NOMAS model. And one is coordinated community response. That the NOMAS model and all of our programs don't exist in isolation. That they exist as part of a community coalition and that they are particularly collaborative with survivor groups. And that we take our marching orders from survivor groups, actually. We run everything by them. And one thing that we really stress is victim safety. And victim safety is one of the reasons why a NOMAS program has absolutely no contact with victims, right? The men in the program are the men in the program. That's the extent of our contact. If a woman wants to contact us, we immediately refer them back to the domestic violence, to the survivor program. And the reason for this is that the fact that a man is in a program may create a false sense of security for the woman. She says, oh, great, he's getting help now. And he may successfully complete the program, right? So now he's back again. She may have changed how she thinks and what she has done in order to protect herself and usually her children because the man is in the program and has now successfully completed it. That puts her at risk, right? The NOMAS program says to a woman, hopefully the man will change, but you should make your planning and live your life with the man that you know you have rather than the one that you hope he has become. Right? Because you can never know, we can never know, which is another reason why NOMAS model programs are very skeptical of all of the research that's done, where you try and get, well, wait a minute, because all the funding agencies, they want to know, is it successful? What's the recidivism rate? All of those kinds of things. They're meaningless. They're totally meaningless. The only person who knows whether a man has stopped offending is the woman that he's been abusing. Right? He may not get caught again, so he's not in a recidivism rate. Right? anger management, all of those kind of things put women at risk. You can't have an anger management, co-counseling, all of that stuff. We're in a patriarchal system. She doesn't have the equal power that he has in those anger management programs. She's at risk. So we have a real focus there on victim safety. And in fact, in a NOMAS program, when a report is made to the court, every official document that's a report to the court, including the successful completion document, says at the bottom, that this document only certifies that this man has completed the course. It does not in any way, signify, that he has changed. Just to make that very, very clear. And let's see, that's probably, a pretty good introduction to the model. There's a lot more to it, and the ongoing training and all of those kinds of things. And if you look on the website, you'll get a better idea. It's still under construction, but there's a lot there about the model. It's a model that really adheres to the NOMAS principles. In training, there's staff training, and staff training takes place once a week, and staff are really developed to try and recognize that they need to be respectful. They need to model. What goes on in the classroom is hopefully a model of what should be going on in people's personal lives, including their intimate lives. Mutual respect, listening, non-bias, all of those kinds of things. So that's a totally conscious focus of a NOMAS program, is have the instructors to recognize exactly what they're doing, exactly what their role is, to never respond. If they're attacked in a program, you don't respond out of anger.
I'm wondering if folks have
that's
any questions or comments while we have a few more minutes. I have a thought to raise, but I'm going to
If not, I'd like to
pass.
share a point when there's time.
Okay, who's this? Go ahead. Go ahead, Donald.
Okay. I just wanted to say, particularly since we're speaking with communities that come together around the issue of faith, that something that might resonate with those communities is that in the NOMAS model, we are focusing on compassion rather than judgment, and that the program itself is one that's based on discipline rather than punishment. Discipline from the same root as disciple, meaning to teach. And that's what we're doing. We're trying to offer a developmental program so that men come into accountability on their own once they recognize the influences that are there on their behavior.
Yeah, a lot of people don't understand that accountability is a skill set of compassion.
And one other quick
thing. People just don't know that,
to remove the issues of heterosexism from domestic violence. One of the sessions that we will be conducting is based on a program that we're starting here in Illinois called Out Safe, dealing specifically with domestic violence issues in the LGBTQIA+ community too. So it's not something that is just heterosexually determined. Domestic violence exists in all kinds of communities, in all kinds of ways.
Does anybody in I know, such good work. We got a hand up. Peter Entree. You need to unmute yourself, Peter. There you go.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, Patty and David and Donald. Great information. Just really wanted to applaud the work. Patty, I know you've been so comprehensive in the collaboration that you've done and the strategic planning you're doing today. It just inspires me that you continue to do that, and the NOMAS work. Just a thought I wanted to share, because being a Christian, faith-based group, and the patriarchy and the hierarchy and what Paul says, I think it's more of a perspective from a Christian, how we can take the scriptures and abuse them, but yet within the scripture there is the key to how we should be in a relationship, men and women. And in Ephesians, where Paul speaks to that very specifically about this great mystery, a man and a woman, and he relates it to Christ and his bride, the church. And this relationship as Christians is a personal relationship we have. And he says that men should love their wives as Christ loves the church, and he was willing to die for her because he knew that they were part of each other. And and then it goes on to say, women, you should respect your husbands. And it gets very specific there, where you could look at it as that hierarchy, dominance, and where people can misinterpret that. And yet it's part of our scriptures, part of our principle. But I think the way that Paul describes a relationship is really what needs to be instilled. And I think that faith component in the work that you're doing is so valuable, because those Judeo-Christian values being incorporated within that context of the transformation of a person, not just the way he thinks, but what he believes, and then how he actually will change his actions. I think that is so powerful. That's why I love this group, how we integrate that, and you take all the work that you're doing. And I just wanted to interject that into your work as you go about moving it into the faith community more. And I know that should, and I would expect, is a conflict for some in how they view that, the hierarchy, the patriarchy. So those are my thoughts. Just again, thank you for your great work.
Aaron, you have your hand up.
Thank you. I just want to give people a little bit of a teaser in terms of the great programming that will be in the conference. In the chat, you'll notice that Presley put in there a link to a Constitution Broadway show. We are having Heidi Schreck come and do a presentation on Friday night. And I think this connects a little bit to what Peter indicated in terms of at different times how the culture and legal, the legal system has addressed domestic violence, because we always get the claim of, why didn't the woman leave? And so Heidi, in her story, kind of shows across generations how at different times women were impacted as to whether they felt they could come forward and reveal what was happening to them.
Powerful.
Yeah,
I'm coming to that.
could...
I need more information about Friday night. I'm coming. Yes, David.
Yeah, I was going to say that that example that Karen just gave. One of the things that the NOMAS program says, an answer to the question, why doesn't she leave? The real question is, what is wrong with our society, where the best choice that a woman can make for her own safety and the safety of her children is to stay in an abusive relationship? That's the real question.
And it's a tough one.
Yeah.
It's a tough one. It's a really tough one for the woman herself, like then recognizing the system part of it, but then still there you are, then how do you, it's a big decision. In this last 2 minutes though, I want to share a thought that's gonna it's a general thought, but it's a very important one. I'm going to scroll here through our icons. Yes, I'm looking through the icons. And I'm also looking at the folks on the screen. Yes, I'm seeing now. Some of us who are doing this kind of work, I might say almost all of us, are hoping and doing efforts so that younger people show up. And I heard that at the beginning of the presentation, right? To hand this forward. Mm-hmm. And I am a huge proponent of hope and how important that is. But unless an action is taken, very specific action, you might not get there. And so I'm going to translate that into each of us, including myself here, need to be on the lookout for somebody specifically about half our age and that doesn't look like this. I serve on the board for the International Charter for Compassion. And when I started serving there, I was one of the youngest members, and I'm not that young. But there was a lot of conversation. How do we get young people to show up? And young people we need to be handing this on to the next generation. I've heard that. And most of us are there in that situation. And so I invited them and challenged everyone on that board to find someone. And if they put intent into that someone would show up to them. They weren't going to have to look that hard. They would show up. And in every case, that's what happened. And so now over half of that board in a year's time is under the age of 35, if not 30. And they're from all over the world. It's an international board, but they're from all around the world because they were looking for somebody that didn't look like that. Me means all of you, right? So to find somebody half your age about that doesn't look like yourself. So you're finding somebody, bringing in diversity as well. And what has happened in that board in less than a year in terms of youth is nothing short of stellar and a miracle. Those young people have put together a virtual conference that have thousands of youth coming to it in less than a year's time. So I challenge all of us and invite all of us. So it's intent and invitation. So to intentionally look for your person and then to invite them into your life and into your spot. And I just think we need to be doing that across the board in all of our collaborative work. Talking about it, giving it our best effort to invite them and encourage them, that's all good. But we gotta be very intentional about finding the next generation and handing it and spending time with them. So I hope I didn't overstep, but I heard that at the beginning, and man, I've heard that so much. And we're not going to do that again. It's happened before in the past where good efforts diffused because there wasn't a process. There wasn't enough intent and knowing how to do it. So thank you all for being with us this morning. Wow, this was really a great briefing. And I'm going to make as much as I can of the conference here in San Antonio. I'm definitely going to come on Friday night because I know I have that open. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And we'll see you all next week at the intersection when we get a briefing from sacred.org. Thank you.